bring people, and then pray here, ask for the blessing of St. Anne.
Tonight, this year's Lac St. Anne pilgrimage is virtual again, but if you can make it in person, no one will stop you.
The evacuees have actually experienced racist comments when they've arrived at the evacuation centers. And I think in some cases people feel that they are treated not as well as non-Indigenous evacuees.
Plus, the First Nation Health Authority puts fire evacuation at the top of their list of mental health issues. And don't forget the pets. A Winnipeg organization evacuates res dogs and other pets from northern communities threatened by wildfires. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. A Manitoba First Nation has started a search at a former residential school looking for unmarked graves. Saugeen First Nation north of Winnipeg has located points of interest. After searching this past week, the community is using ground-penetrating radar technology on the former Fort Alexander residential school grounds. An engineering firm from Toronto is doing the ongoing search. They will analyze the data in the coming weeks. Chief Derek Henderson says elders have fueled their search.
These are stories that were told by our elders and our knowledge keepers, and that's who we're listening to, and that's who is telling us what needs to be done. And our leadership, very supportive, of course, that we have to do this for our people.
For the second year, the Lac St. Anne pilgrimage in Alberta will be an online virtual event. Before COVID, up to 30,000 people would travel from across Canada and the world to attend the pilgrimage. Since 1889, thousands travel to Lac St. Anne, which some say has healing properties, and to pray. The pilgrimage begins on July 24th. While the event will be online, the pastor for Lac St. Anne says anyone who does come will be welcomed.
Please come, come to the lake, and normally as you do, you come for healing to this place, you bring elders, you bring people who are maybe not well, do the same, and bring people, and then pray here, ask for the blessing of St. Anne. And if I am here on the grounds, I also will be more than happy to be with you and to bless you and to pray with you.
Video and images of the police raids at homeless encampments in Toronto has outraged many. One of those looking for solutions is Senator Kim Pate. She says the looming federal election is a good time to press politicians for concrete action on the issue. Senator Pate joins us now from Ottawa. Senator Pate, thanks for taking some time for us. This week wasn't the first time one of these encampments has been cleared out by police in Toronto or other cities for that matter, but this one seemed particularly violent. What are your thoughts on what you saw happening?
What I saw was a tremendous and overuse of force. I saw people being assaulted. In some of the frames I saw, we actually saw police officers pushing people to the ground. Those are assaults, and those are unlawful. And the fact that it was being done in the context of people having a peaceful protest to bring attention to the human rights violations and the human rights needs of others who are enjoying a park in a peaceful way, and ostensibly to make room for other people to enjoy the park, I think, should challenge all of us to think seriously about what role the police thought they were playing in that situation.
Now, everyone is expecting a federal election soon. Why do you feel this is a good time to press leaders on where they stand on poverty?
Well, I think it's vitally important. During this pandemic, it has laid bare the inequities many of us knew about. The inequities for Indigenous people, for racialized people, for people who are living in poverty. We know that the health outcomes were worst amongst those who were most economically marginalized. And we know that more than 3 million, in fact, closer to 5 million people were left behind with no support during this time, unlike the supports that were being provided by the CERB and wage subsidies and other initiatives. And those were laudable, really important initiatives to help people when they were in need. But the fact that we didn't help the people who were most significantly impacted, I think, is incredibly problematic. The fact that during this time we were relying on people to do personal support work, delivery, work in essential services and provide us with groceries and all of the like. And some of them had to stopped doing several part-time or several full-time jobs, and we had full-time workers, like personal support workers, working at minimum wage jobs, but not able to afford a place to live, living in shelters or on the street. That's egregious. That should not be happening in a country as rich as Canada. And we have an opportunity to address poverty. This pandemic laid bare those inequities, and it's time that we actually address them. And I don't see any reason we can't. We also know that poverty costs a lot, that it is actually cheaper to address poverty than it is to continue to keep people in abject poverty, because the costing isn't just what goes into social assistance and other programs. It's the cost of health care when people can't afford sustainable, nutritious food, when they can't afford to have ongoing health care, when they can't afford their medication. And so we need to have the kinds of strong social, economic, and health safety nets that will benefit all people. And we also know that people who make the least, people living who have few resources, people working at minimum wage jobs, people surviving on social assistance and disability, that money all goes back into the economy. And we know from the research done on the Canada Child Benefit, which is like a guaranteed livable income for people with children, that for every dollar that's invested in that program, it causes the invigoration of $2 of economic growth. That should be something we should all want to see for everybody, not just for those who are living in poverty now.
All right, Senator Pate, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to speak with us today.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for all your work.
Two First Nations in southern Alberta want a proposed coal mine to be approved, despite a board's decision that the project is not in the public's best interest. As Tamara Pimentel reports, some members of those communities say they were not consulted and want the mine rejected.
There has been a lot of controversy over the proposed Grassy Mountain coal mine. For months, thousands, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, protested against the project and signed a petition to have the proposal shut down. And in June, a joint federal and provincial review panel that included the Alberta Energy Regulator made the decision to reject the mine as it wasn't in the public's best interest. That was good news for Blackfoot groups like the Niitsitapi Water Protectors and Mountain Child Valley Society, who want to protect the eastern slopes of the Rockies and waterways, such as the Old Man River.
And it was a day to celebrate because all of our advocacy and lobbying work that we did, we had won, the first round. But when that had happened, I always knew that there's always an opportunity to appeal.
Now, Benga Mining, the company behind the project, has filed an appeal against the panel's decision, and so have the Stoney Nakoda and Piikani Nations.
It's a really, really gut-wrenching issue.
Adam North-Pagan of the Child Valley Society in Piikani says community members were not given a notice of the appeal.
Up until this day, there is still no meaningful consultation with the grassroots Piikani members in our community, from our leadership. And they are unilaterally making that decision to support that coal mining project that's 40 kilometers outside of our community.
The Stoney application stated the panel did not properly assess the impact that rejecting the project would have on Stoney Nakoda, Aboriginal and treaty rights and economic interests. In a media release from Piikani, Chief Stanley Grier stated, the Piikani Nation supports the project and believes that it is an example of how mining can be done in a way that benefits surrounding communities. Grassy Mountain is projected to produce nearly 93 million tons of coal over 23 years and provide jobs to nearby communities like Piikani. But North-Pagan says the environmental impacts outweigh the benefits.
We're continuing our aggressive lobbying efforts to continue to voice our concerns and let leadership know that, we're not going to be silenced. It's our responsibility to protect those traditional gathering and hunting and places where we used to go pick our medicinal herbs and we have a responsibility to protect that, contrary to the position of what our leadership is doing.
APTN has reached out to both Stoney and Piikani leadership. No one was available for comment before airtime. All three applications are to be heard in September. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
We have to take a short break, but still to come, we'll update you on the wildfire situation that continues to rage across the country. Welcome back. Raging wildfires in BC are forcing more people to flee their homes. The fire that destroyed Lytton is now threatening the community of Spence's Bridge.
Hoping to have a home to go back to, but it is very, very smoky. Almost too much for my new baby.
Some of the people who left Spence's Bridge are staying at an evacuation center in Chilliwack. More than 270 fires are burning across BC, with unpredictable winds making for difficult conditions. Evacuation orders are in place for about 4,300 properties. Close to 18,000 more are under evacuation alert. And a team from the Canadian Armed Forces will be deployed in Manitoba today to help battle wildfires in the province. 120 members of the CAF have been training at CFB Shiloh. The troops will help hold existing fire lines and assist local fire crews on priority fires. 5 First Nations in Manitoba have been evacuated, affecting more than 2,000 people. Meanwhile, hydro officials say it could take several days to restore power to 4 of those communities after workers found hydro poles damaged by fire. And the mental health team at the First Nation Health Authority in BC has placed fire evacuation at the top of their list of mental health issues affecting First Nation people. With weeks and perhaps months left in what some fear will be the worst wildfire season ever, the FNHA wants it known that there are services ready for those in distress. Rob Smith has that story.
Premier John Horgan takes questions hours after a provincial state of emergency is called.
But for those who are living through yet another horrific fire season, this is a graphic reminder of how climate change is with us, not just intermittently, but all the time. Whether it's successive difficult fire seasons or floods or the heat dome, which is the first we've experienced, which I'm hopeful will be the last, but that's not the evidence that we're seeing on the horizon.
An acknowledgement that things are probably going to get a whole lot worse. Concern for the mental health of evacuees is growing, especially in First Nation communities already dealing with a litany of stresses.
Well, this is a really challenging wildfire season for BC First Nations. There's a lot going on right now, not just the wildfires, but the unmarked graves being found at different former sites of residential schools. And so I think there's a lot of trauma that people are experiencing and re-experiencing.
There's the danger of evacuation, the fear of losing a home, and then sometimes yet another layer of trauma is heaped on.
Evacuees have actually experienced racist comments when they've arrived at the evacuation centers. And I think in some cases people feel that they are treated not as well as non-Indigenous evacuees. So, for example, being housed in hotel rooms that are substandard.
Fanny Vance watched her community burn in 2018. She helped feed and house firefighters. Eventually, she was also forced to flee. A year later, diagnosed with PTSD, she still suffered a reoccurring nightmare.
So my nightmares are the fire burning over the back of that bluff and coming down at me like a wave, like a ocean wave.
Research shows First Nations wildfire evacuations is a larger issue than most think.
First Nation communities are actually disproportionately impacted by wildfire in Canada. We've had over 1,000 wildfire evacuation events across the nation, but over 49% of those in our recent analysis were actually of Indigenous communities with greater than 50% Indigenous population.
Christensen says officials still have yet to really speak to First Nation evacuees about their unique experiences. One area that is working, communities stepping up to lend a helping hand.
It seems like there's the most success is actually the ones where First Nations are also set up to help in host communities. So the one example is Tecumseh's in Kamloops. I mean, they have just done a fantastic job back in 2018 evacuations, but also this year, where they've really set up like their powwow grounds to host evacuees.
One of the reasons that people become so distressed is because none of what's happening to them is within their control, and having to live with that uncertainty going forward, even for weeks or months at a time, is really stressful for people. So again, that's another reason why we encourage and we are trying to offer as many mental health supports as possible.
Rob Smith, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Now an update to a story we brought you yesterday. The communities of Pangasi, Little Grand Rapids, Barons River, Red Sucker Lake and Bloodvein First Nations have been evacuated due to the wildfire threat, and they had to leave their pets behind. A local pet rescue says community leaders went up by plane yesterday afternoon and took up more than 500 pounds of food. They rescued 4 dogs, but discovered some pets have perished due to lack of food and water for a week. Manitoba Animal Alliance says donations have been pouring in from stores and individuals. A group of volunteers picked up 1,300 pounds of kibble donated by a local Costco, and they are run off their feet. Ken Hudson is a volunteer with the organization.
We sent up, it would be about 500, 600 pounds this morning on a charter flight that was also taking up some people to help out. They took the dog food, they took dog kennels as well, and those dog kennels have dogs in them, and they are at this moment on their way back to St. Andrews, and they will be picked up there and taken to various foster homes that are being arranged through the city.
We have to step aside for one final break, but still ahead, our photo of the day. But first, in the Atlantic region, Mi'kmaq fishers are once again getting ready to harvest lobster. Angel Moore is on the scene and previews a report she'll have for you after the weekend.
For the last couple of days, I've been here in southwestern Nova Scotia. I joined Sabaganagati First Nation fishers who are fishing lobster under their food, ceremonial, and social fishery. They are following their community's management plan. But there's a large number of RCMP and Department of Fisheries and Oceans in the area. The fishers say they feel intimidated and are worried their traps will be seized. I'll have more of this story on Monday. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Soniavale Wharf.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Thanks to Greg Scriver for sending us this photo he captured here. We see a zoomed-in shot of the moon as seen behind the haze of a smoky evening in Ottawa, Ontario. Send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Beginning in the east, 21 in rain in St. John's and 20 in Charlottetown. 24 in a mix of sun and cloud in Nain and 26 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 26 and sunshine in Quebec City and 23 in Val-d'Or. 26 and rain in Toronto and 22 and rain in North Bay. 24 and rain in Timmins and 26 and sun in Sioux Lookout. 26 and sun and cloud in God's Lake and 24 in Norway House. 29 in mix of sun and cloud in Gimli and 26 and sunshine in Dauphin. 25 in sun in North Battleford and 26 in sun in Regina. 23 in rain in La Ronge and 20 in Uranium City. Over in the west, 22 in sun in Peace River and 23 in rain in Fort McMurray. 24 in sunshine in Calgary and 24 in sun in Edmonton. 32 and sun in Kamloops and 24 in Quesnel. 18 in rain in Dease Lake and 20 in rain in Smithers. 21 degrees in Mayo and 19 in Whitehorse. 22 in a mix of sun and cloud in Wrigley and 22 in sun in Norman Wells. 19 in sun in Colville Lake and 22 in Fort McPherson. 7 and rain in Baker Lake and 12 in Chesterfield. 15 in Iqaluit and 6 in Clyde River. The Yukon's northernmost community is experiencing record-breaking temperatures, and those temperatures are also causing flooding in the south. Sarah Connors has the details.
Old Crow is home to the Vuntut First Nation and is the northernmost community in the Yukon. The average high for Old Crow this time of year is around 20 degrees. But on July 20th, Environment Canada issued a heat warning for the community as temperatures soared over 29 degrees Celsius, breaking the previous record of 28.5 degrees. Vuntut citizen Brandon Kikavicic says the heat was uncomfortable.
It was pretty hot for this far in the Arctic. I think it was up around plus 30-ish or somewhere around there, which many of us are not used to.
Kikavicic says it's cause for concern.
Every single year, I think we've broken the record for average temperature up here anyway in terms of how much warmer it is. So I'm talking the winters are warmer, the summers are warmer. And the river is so low that we can walk right across it.
Erratic weather has also caused major flooding in southern Yukon. Record snowfall last winter, followed by a late spring and unusually high temperatures in June, caused snowpacks to melt at an alarming rate, causing major flooding in the Southern Lakes region and Lake LaBarge.
So these conditions combined caused the large amount of remaining snow that we did have in June to melt quickly.
Holly Golding is a senior hydrologist for Yukon government. She says the flooding has surpassed the 2007 flood of record by 4 to 14 centimeters in the Southern Lakes and 35 centimeters in Lake LaBarge.
So this is actually the highest water levels that have ever been seen on this system.
While few people have had to evacuate, rising waters have caused damage like groundwater seepage to almost 200 homes. For weeks, flood response teams, residents, and volunteers have filled around 280,000 sandbags, and the Canadian Armed Forces have been brought in to help build berms. While Golding couldn't say the floods were directly linked to climate change, she did say they were influenced by extreme weather runs.
I guess what I'll say is climate change studies predict both a wetter and warmer climate for Yukon and also an increase in extreme events. And so that's kind of what we've seen through this event.
Water levels are slowly dropping in the Southern Lakes region and have stabilized in Lake LaBarge. There is concern normal precipitation levels in mid-August could cause them to rise again. However, flood response tells me berms are being built to the highest expected water level, and they're confident they can keep the flooding at bay. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
After more than 100 years playing Major League Baseball, known as the Cleveland Indians, the team has decided to change its name. Following this season, they will be known as the Cleveland Guardians. The name change came because of public pressure and other professional sports teams changing their controversial names. Near the team stadium along the Hope Memorial Bridge stand the Guardians of Traffic, two stone monuments that inspired the new name. Guardians was the final selection after a review of nearly 1,200 names. That's all we have for you on this Friday edition of APTN National News. For news anytime, you can visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Have a great night.